Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. Welcome to the panel discussions Land Your Dream Job. This is Amit Arora, your program manager, joining from Atlanta. Please feel free to post your questions in the QA section. Let me start by introducing to you all our host and moderator, Dr. Animesh Pathak. Our visionary leader, Dr. Pathak, refers to himself as a recovering academic after transitioning from academia. He now drives innovation as the head of R&D and engineering at MyKarma, a fast-growing B2B SaaS leader transforming the automotive customer interaction space. A proud alumnus of USC and IIT BHU Varanasi, Dr. Pathak brings a wealth of expertise to his role as Vice President of PanIIT USA, where he's shaping the future of PanIIT USA community. Over to you, Animesh.
Thank you very much, Amit. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this exclusive job search panel hosted by PanIIT USA. With the tech market currently in a bit of turmoil, we at PanIIT USA, which is the umbrella organization in the USA of alumni of the IITs, the Indian Institutes of Technology, are pleased and honored to host this event where you will gain valuable insights from 4 professionals: 2 seasoned top hiring managers, a top executive recruiter, and a recent job seeker who has successfully navigated the job market. Now, whether you're actively seeking new opportunities or just exploring, our goal today is to give you strategic tips on standing out in today's competitive landscape, networking effectively, and aligning your career goals with the right opportunities. Now, please note that this event is intended to be extremely interactive, so we will keep running polls. In fact, one of them is going to get going very quickly, and please take a look at the polls, answer those questions. We want to know who you are. We want to know what you're looking for, and that's how we'll start. So I just launched the poll. Take a look, answer those questions. It'll be important for us to understand how many years of experience you have. Oh my God, I see people responding very quickly. Nice. So it lets us understand what the mix of the audiences is over here, and it allows our panelists to, well, answer your questions, the questions you care for, as opposed to the questions your most boring professors will answer that nobody would care about, right? That's the goal. Now, without further ado, we will go to the panelists. Dr. Bharat Rao, IIT Madras, if I'm not missing over here, is a visionary leader, big data expert, got a PhD at UIUC years ago, has spent so much time in, well, pioneering innovations of billions plus dollars, a former senior partner at KPMG, has been honored by the ACM, the Association of Computing Machinery, with the highest lifetime award in data science. Dr. Rao's expertise extends to navigating global regulatory landscapes, safeguarding patient privacy. He also has a startup going right now for a couple of years. That'll be interesting to hear. And of course, he advises to various advisory boards. Moving on, our second hiring manager is Surabhi Kaul, IIT Kanpur, who lives in the Bay Area. With over 2 decades of leadership at Fortune 500 giants, such as Google, YouTube, and Netflix, Surabhi has spearheaded pioneering products and engineering teams. If I'm not wrong, my Google Home speaker just went off, and that's Surabhi had a role to play in that. So I'm going to send a bug report to her later about that. She launched the first networking products at Google Cloud Platform and currently leads customer experience at Nile, where they leverage AI to enhance service delivery and customer success. Surabhi is a very passionate advocate for inclusion and diversity. She mentors and contributes to initiatives such as the IIT AI ML Forum, Women in Product. I also happen to know that Surabhi is a fellow board member on PanIIT USA. Surabhi is also a visiting professor here at UCLA. I live in LA. Surabhi lives up in the Bay Area. Surabhi has also been deeply involved in Thai Bay Area and such recently. So Surabhi, thank you for coming. Moving on to Neetu, who did not go to an IIT, but she has an awesome IIT history. We'll talk to her about that in a moment. Neetu has over 20 years of experience in recruiting and staffing. Neetu Gulati is a visionary leader who's renowned for building and leading high-performance teams that have driven growth and success. A whole bunch of organizations owe their current teams to Neetu's involvement, including, for example, orgs like Tinder, Honey, Dollar Shave Club, The Honest Company, and Snapchat. A whole bunch of LA focus over here. Yes, Neetu is in the Southern California area. I'm happy to have her nearby. And Neetu's collaborations with investors, CEOs, and CTOs have given her a very unique perspective. I'm really looking forward to hearing from Neetu, trying to better understand what happens when, well, people look for other people in very high capacities. last and definitely not the least, in fact, representing, I would argue, the vast majority of the audience today is Vijay. Vijay is an impact-focused IT professional who has deep expertise in data analytics, engineering, and consulting. He has proficiency in BI reporting, trend analysis, and forecasting drives. He has been forecasting impactful business solutions as a result of this stuff. He is equipped with dual master's degree. Oh my God. Master's in big data management from GSU and an MTech in biotech from IIT Kharagpur. So we have a whole bunch of IIT representation going on. And of course, he has triple bachelor's, biotech, law, and arts. So I think we have to do a whole different poll, Vijay, for you to figure out how many degrees people hold in the room. I think you're going to win that particular race. Vijay has a very interesting perspective because he has been navigating the career landscape recently. So I look forward to hearing his point of view in, well, that particular aspect. It's going to be fun, guys. Once again, please remember to get your answers going before we go to the intros. Just a quick summary for our audiences. We have 52% people who have 20 plus years of experience, followed closely by 31% of people who have 0 to 10 years of experience. And the middle band, 10 to 20, is an 18%. So once again, we're looking at 20 plus people in actually a full-on majority, 52% people over here, followed by 0 to 10, and then by 10 to 20. And with that said, let's get through to our round of intros. I think it'll be good to understand your respective stories. I'm going to go with Surabhi, Bharat, Neetu, and Vijay. Please tell us a bit about yourself and your career journey starting from your graduation till right now. Surabhi.
Thank you, Animesh. First of all, such a pleasure to be here on this panel, and so glad that PanIIT team has decided to do this for the community. And I hope you all get a lot of value out of it. I will share a little bit about my journey, keep it short and sweet, but if you have additional questions, we will definitely go over them in the Q&A session. So I started my journey at HP here in the Bay Area, but prior to that, I did my undergrad in India at IIT Kanpur and came here to do my master's at Texas A&M, from where I got my first job from campus. And at that time, I was one of those kids who just wanted to land a job. I did not know what I would be doing or did not have a goal. So it was serendipity that I landed here in the Bay Area doing network engineering. And my career has been foundationally, fundamentally associated with networking ever since. And after HP, I went to Cisco for a few years, where I got my CCIE certification, staying very technical and hands-on in my work approach. But post CCIE, I realized that a whole bunch of doors opened for me. So I went and did a few startups, some successful, some not so successful. And along the way in startup, one thing I loved and learned about a startup environment was that you're able to wear many hats. And I moved along that journey. I moved into product management, which was an area that a lot of people express a lot of interest. So if there are questions, we can talk about that. But from engineering, I went into product management, and I've kind of stayed in the product and customer-facing roles ever since. After spending a few years in those startup environments, I went to Google and GCP, and again, with a very networking mindset, stayed at GCP for a few years before moving within Google. So one good thing about Google was that they did promote and encourage product leaders to move around within the company. So I ended up going into B2C space at YouTube, and then also at Google Home, which Animesh was just referring to, that any problems you have, you can blame me. Not really. There are a whole bunch of us. So product management teams at Google Home were very large, and we had an even larger assistant and NLP and research teams that were doing all the machine learning. So got a lot of good exposure there into the machine learning space, but also realized that I was always, if I stayed at Google, it was, my ability to move up was limited because it had become a very large company about 5 years ago. That's when I decided to move to a smaller company, Juniper Networks, not super small, but smaller than Google. And there I had the opportunity to do something very different, to lead their software transformation and make the company more new age, preparing for the acquisition that finally just happened this year. And again, I stayed very much in product management, leading customer experience, customer success, product management. And from there, more recently, 6 months ago, I have jumped ship and I've joined a startup called Nile, which is doing networking as a service. It's a John Chambers startup. For those of you who don't know, John Chambers was the longest time CEO of Cisco, and he is now trying to do something different, something fundamentally different in how we do networking, but still very much so addressing a similar user base as we were at Cisco. So that's a little bit about my journey. Along the way, I have also picked up a teaching adjunct professorship at UCLA, which I truly enjoy. I should not say this on recording, but actually more than my day job, teaching is something which gives me a lot of joy. Sharing my learnings and my whatever, I wouldn't call wisdom, I don't consider myself wise, but whatever nuggets I have, picked up along the way to give it to, starry-eyed youngsters, it's such a joy. So I love doing that. And then other than that, PanIIT, of course, I've been very active in the Alumni Association, whether it's IIT Kanpur or PanIIT. So very happy to be here and very happy to share anything I can that would make everybody's journeys easier. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Surabhi. As a recovering academic myself, I am very envious of your teaching gig. Moving on to a fellow PhD, super senior of mine, Bharat, over to you. How has your journey been, sir?
Thank you for doing this. So first of all, can we switch order? Can someone else follow Surabhi? Because that's such a Renaissance woman background to follow. And I'm sitting there like, okay, I'm going to come across as the super nerd when I follow her and what she has, the amazing journey she's taken. But I will try. That's with several touch points I heard, Surabhi, which I'll touch on with you later. Background, I did my undergrad in IIT Madras, electronics, came over to the US and did my PhD in AI and machine learning. So, and in the 90s. And one of the great things that has happened recently is that I no longer have to say I have a PhD in computer science. I can actually say I have a PhD in machine learning, which then is followed by the statement, wait, they had AI that long ago, and I want to just go slap, slap, slap. Of course they did, you idiots, but that's a different story. So joined, came out, was going to be an academic, was going to be a professor, and then, decided I really loved the applied aspects of machine learning and joined Siemens, which had the corporate research lab. And at that time, the first ever machine learning group in a corporate research lab. My dream job. I did projects in every kind of everything electron flow through, whether it's a cement plant, a power plant, a light bulb, healthcare. Siemens is a major producer of healthcare equipment. The Brazil airport. Fell in love with healthcare and then transitioned over to Siemens Healthcare. So I was in Siemens for almost 2 decades. For the last decade, essentially leading what today would be called their healthcare AI division. Built about 20 healthcare AI products that sort of managed to be both sort of a quasi-academic and a business guy, lots of patents, lots of papers, but also 20 healthcare AI products, took them through regulatory approval, deployed them at 1,000+ health systems worldwide, serving millions of patients every day, generating a lot of money for Siemens. And then in 2012, decided to go over to the dark side, joined KPMG as a senior partner and a consultant, leading their healthcare and life sciences, founding and leading their healthcare and life sciences AI and analytics practice. Grew that to about 1,000 people and abruptly decided to take early retirement and co-found the startup because of a deeply personal story, which I can share later, which is really sort of been focused on what I've been singularly focused on my entire life. How can we improve? I come from a family of physicians, wasn't smart enough to be a doctor, but decided I could have impact using technology to help lots of people with healthcare. And so that's what my startup is about. If I would say, the title of this is What is Your Dream Job? And I've been super fortunate in that throughout my career, I've had for almost all the time what I would consider a dream job, in that I loved what I did. Consequently, didn't worry about making a lot of money, didn't worry about a lot of other things, didn't worry about promoting, but I just loved what I did. And I've many people come to me now and say, wow, you worked in healthcare AI, you were so smart. And I said, no, I was insanely dumb because a lot of people said I was very stupid to work in healthcare in AI because, garbage in, garbage out. The whole concept of real world evidence, which is old today, was very new. And for about 15 years, if I had $1 every time I heard garbage in, garbage out, I would be self-funding my startup. I wouldn't need VC money. So the one piece for you, I would say, and we'll come to this, is know yourself when it comes to a dream job. Know what you want, know what makes you happy. And there's nothing wrong if that is, hey, I'd like to make a lot of money, I'd like to do this, but understand what it is you're really looking for and then work towards that. And view your career as a series of steps that either get you there and move you towards it. Happy to talk more later. Toss it back to you, Animesh.
Bharat, thank you very much. Amazing intro. Also a wonderful tee up for the next poll that I'm going to run. This poll, my friends, asks you the question, what are you here looking for? Any job, just want to change? A stepping stone, maybe, increasing responsibility, or a dream job, as in, hey, life is good, but I wonder what I'm missing. So I am going to end the first poll, and I am going to launch this one. Please put in the answers. It'll be good to see where our audience is. I see some questions coming in. Amitabh, behind the scenes, is actively corralling those questions into a nice list for me, for the panelists. That'll be fun. And while people are polling, oh my God, the polls are flowing in. It's very nice. We're going to move on to Neetu. Neetu, go ahead. I know, as I said, you didn't go to IIT, but there's a story there.
Yes. So I grew up in Edison, New Jersey, which a lot of you might be familiar with. It's where everyone goes to grab their clothing when they get married and food and everything else. So I grew up in a very Indian community. My dad went to IIT in 1964 to 1969, and he was in the Nilgiri and Aravali, hopefully I pronounced that right, dorms. So that's my background and the connection with IIT, and I think very highly of the university. Of course, my dad was able to take his education and get a full ride to Seattle for his master's and PhD, and they took care of the visa and everything else. So it was quite a great story, and that's my connection to IIT. I went a little bit against the grain. I did my undergrad at Georgetown. The intention was to be a lawyer. At that time, I was there from 96 to 2000. The protocol was to take a year off in between undergrad and grad. And the reason being is that they wanted to see you have a year of work. So in that year off, and I'm sorry, mom and dad just wanted to get away from my family, I went across country to California and I took a recruiting job. I will have a little bit of a different take for you as we talk, in the sense that it was not my dream job. It was not what I was supposed to do. I was just going to do it for a year and then make my wonderful parents happy and go be a lawyer. And I did none of that. In the year that I was there, it was 2000. So it was right at the start of the tech boom. It was insane. You could call the wrong number and reach a company that was hiring, and people were hiring anything and everything in technology. No one ever really knew what it was. I remember hearing Java for the first time. And the first person I placed into a Java developer role was actually a Visual Basic developer. And I had no idea what that was or what I was doing, but the person hired him. So I was like, all right, that works. And I will talk a little bit later about recruiting and what the different aspects of recruiting are and how it's best to work with a recruiter. But for right now, I'll stick to my story, which was I got addicted. I was like, wow, this is a great sector to be in. I'm pretty sure if I'm in it, I'll always be employed. I don't have to go to school for another 3 years and then take the bar. And then, it's a really great life to be a lawyer, but there was a lot of work left. I do like money. And so being in recruiting, which is the equivalent of sales, I was like, wow, so I can really deliver revenue, learn a ton of stuff that I never learned. My undergrad was not in computer science. I did not know anything about technology. And back then, I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't know how to use Messenger. And so, it was just a different time. I ended up staffing the first 50, I don't know, actually, let's not quote that. Let's just say I staffed a huge amount of people at MySpace. So it was the first big, social media company. It was in LA. And it just showed me that the space was massive. And it was at the beginning. Of course, at that time, I was like, what is this? Are people going to meet online? You're going to go meet somebody at a coffee shop that you don't know? It was just kind of wild. When you think about it now, that's how everyone meets. That's the standard. Anywho, so as my career developed, I was fortunate enough, based on that early experience, to meet a lot of entrepreneurs and get to be on the ground floor of staffing teams for Tinder and Honey and a lot of big names in the LA ecosystem. I was really fortunate and lucky to do it. I would say throughout my career, there's plenty of times we can highlight, because I'm here. So some part of it is showing you the strengths, and I can highlight the things that are wonderful. But there have been plenty of times where it was not my dream job and something else kept me there, whether it was the income or the people that I work with or the culture or the flexibility. I've alternated back and forth on many aspects of my job being a dream, and many aspects of the job not being a dream and being things that I have to do. So anywho, that's just quick backstory. I am fortunate that because my job is revenue, that I get to dictate a lot of freedom. I get to have weekends off. I get to have as much PTO as I want, so long as I'm delivering. And that for me is really important, because I have 3 kids and I have 4 dogs, and I'll mention my husband so that, he doesn't feel left out. But a lot of those things are important and they're vital, and they're things that you will consider as you go back and forth through your career. And that there'll be times in your life that it'll dictate a job that you take or that you don't take. That's it.
Neetu, thank you so much. We're going to come back to you with a whole bunch of deep probing questions. For those of you who didn't catch that, now we have an even better IT representation. Aravali is IT Delhi. So now we have D, M, K, yeah, a whole bunch of variations going on over here, which is perfect. Continuing over here, and I see the poll is still being answered. People, we have 100+ respondents already. Please go ahead and reply to the poll. It'll be good for us to understand as we steer the conversation forward. Vijay, over to you, my friend.
I'm so humbled. I see people like who are experts here, and I'm the least of the most, but I'll try to do my best. So I come from a middle class background, and life is tough, and we make choices. So my first choice was to switch between MBBS and engineering. I got a medical seat, but I could not afford the fees. I got a payment seat, so I didn't go for that route. And I tried e-commerce, didn't like it. Then I tried BTech in biotechnology. I liked it, and there I started wondering like how research is. And then I was dreaming about getting into IITs, because that's the other channel we can go inside. So finally, I made into the IIT Kharagpur, one of the top 15. So that's where I started learning the competition, like in the other side of the world, apart from medical side. And within a short time, I started getting exposed to leadership here in IIT itself. So I like the food at IITs are not that great. So I was hungry, and I took the opportunity to contest in the elections. I won with a landslide majority. It's a mess role. No one wants to get into the mess, but I took it, and I did a great change there. People loved, including people actually would come to my hostel to eat food. So that's the quality of the food improvement. So then I realized, like I had the leadership capabilities, and I was doing my research in cancer biology. It was pioneering research. I got offered to continue to do a PhD, but again, due to finances, I moved out of the line, and I moved into IT world totally, Infosys. And that's the time where we had recession. And back to back, I was trained in 2 technologies, thinking that things would get better and I would get a project, which never happened. Feeling bored, didn't want to sit on bench. Finally, I bulk emailed all the leadership saying that you hired me and you're just making me sit on the bench. And I actually got my first opportunity there. I'm glad that I worked with marketing people within Infosys as a market research analyst. And then that actually opened up new opportunities. So I was excited to learn more. So I took different roles every year. The flip side is I had to compromise on my promotions, but that's fine. I end up working in consulting, R&D, and like more like a product owner. And then I got an opportunity to work as an academic associate in ISB, and that's like a 2 years tenure there. And there I learned the nitty-gritty of management. And I was thinking like, no, okay, now I got everything. And at that time, life happened. Got married. My wife had a visa to US, and we moved to US. And we had our firstborn. He was 8 months old. I was thinking the moment I'll come into US, I'll get a job. I applied for H1B, got unlucky. But the good part is I spent time with my child. As a full-time dad, I used to boast, like that's my best time. And then again, I tried one more time, didn't get lucky again. So finally, I had to go for my master's in big data analytics, and I aced my master's there. I got into Home Depot, and also later currently I'm working in Dot Foods. So most of my work is in data analytics and data engineering stuff. So this is basically about my life. And to answer the question, like why did I do multiple degrees? I felt bored when I was doing my BTech, so I did my BA in arts. I was thinking to get into civil servant because my father wanted me to get in there. I tried. I went to the coaching center. I never liked it, so I didn't go there finally. And then I was feeling bored further, so then I took up a law degree just to know what it is all about. So that's how I end up in doing multiple studies, and they are very handy in the long run now.
That is impressive. Very, very impressive, Vijay. A whole bunch of questions coming your way soon as well. So yeah, I think Vijay, you and Neetu can then share notes on how you broke news to your parents about, oh wait, dad, mom, you want me to go here? Didn't quite do this. That said, I'm still kicking a whole bunch of butt. Uh, wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody, for your intros. Audience, great questions coming in. Quick update on the poll. 52%, again, a majority, are looking for their dream jobs. I wonder if there's a correlation now, data analysis, right? I'm wondering if the 52% is strongly correlated to people who have 20 plus years of experience. The second most voted for at 28% is the stepping stone perspective, increase in responsibility. And the least at 20%, but still an important 20%, is any job, just want to change. And let's acknowledge that in a very weird way, any job one is the most urgent. You need to figure out something. At the same time, the dream job and stepping stone are more important. Bharat, I'm going to be coming back to you in a bit to go far deeper into those. That said, for the moment, I do want to start with maybe a boring but an important question. So it'll be first for you, then for Bharat as hiring managers. How do you filter when you post a position? So I've noticed recently you have posted some positions as well. You get 20, 100, 200 resumes. LinkedIn, for example, has made applying for jobs much easier, or maybe Neetu brings you 20 candidates. So in this case, how does something stand out to you?
Thank you, Animesh, first for punting over a boring question, which I don't consider boring at all, because I think this is extremely important, right? How do you differentiate yourself from a whole bunch of resumes that somebody receives? Now, I will leave that initial screening portion of that to Neetu, because right now I'm in a startup, so I end up screening a lot of the resumes myself. So for each of the jobs, I got about 500 resumes within a week. So there is which is why when I posted on LinkedIn, I said it's a very immediate need in our community to figure out the job market, but people are looking. And so out of those 500, how do you screen? And so, of course, we will try and use some bots initially to look at basic things like number of years of experience. I might look for some keywords. I might look for the specific role that I'm hiring for. Has the person done that or not previously? And that is not always needed, but in some roles, like customer success management is one of the openings I had, and I was looking for that specific role, so I did that filter. But I'm going to focus more on, and if that's what you're asking me, Animesh, on how to differentiate yourself during maybe a phone screen or during an interview, in-person interview, because I think you have already made the cut, but still now the competition is stronger. Like what Vijay was talking about, you're really standing neck to neck with many people of similar background, they have been filtered. Then how do you differentiate yourself? And I can spend a little bit of time on that, because I think that's extremely important. that as you go through your interview, you ensure you give very concrete examples. No matter what the questions are being asked, showcase how you have, made that happen in your journey. A lot of times people keep the answers very high level, generic, and that's not always impactful. Tell the person interviewing you or having a conversation what your journey, your life has been like. And also when you give examples of what projects you worked on, etc., talk about your contribution. Even if it's not, that you may think that it's not impactful enough, it's important for the hiring manager to know what you bring to the table. And then, of course, always support that with metrics and data on how that project was successful, or even if it's not successful. I believe that in every journey we are learning, and that's the key point, that you show a growth mindset, that you're here to learn. You're not perfect, you're not the wise one who has all the answers, but you are one of the many, and we are every day trying to be a better version of ourselves. Make sure that that comes through. And the last thing I would say, Animesh, is that I always give time to people to ask questions. And if they don't ask me questions, that's not a good sign to me.
Oh my God.
Right. I want people to have done some homework, some research. Let's say right now I'm working at Nile. So do a little homework. Ask me meaningful questions about Nile. How's the company doing? Or even about your own role, or even about, what are the challenges that will come across in that role. So I look for all of those things when I have interviews or phone screen people. So.
Thank you very much, Ruby. I think the point about the startup where you have to screen yourself is a very important one. As people apply for jobs, it's important for them to understand that if you apply to a large company, there will be an org structure. There will be people who will be filtering who will not be practitioners. If you're applying to a small company, the BS meter is going to be much tighter. Like, be very careful because you'll be speaking to the CTO straight up. Like, you don't know. We've seen versions of this. Quick thing before I move towards Bharat. So we talked about examples. Do you have a notable example of an example that you were given recently that stuck with you?
Oh, that's a good one. Let me think about that, then I'll come back to
Cool.
that.
I'm going to move to Bharat, then I can come back to you, Surabhi.
Okay, thank you.
It's a great question, Animation. If I look back at sort of my three sort of hiring phases, Siemens, KPMG, and now in my startup, sort of very different profiles of ways I approached it. In Siemens, my goal was to build one of the best machine learning groups in the world, plus a great software team. But to Surbhi's point, I had the structure beneath me. I had folks, we'd start with 100 resumes and get down to 3 people, and I'd have people in my team do phone interviews, etc., to do that. And then we brought people in literally for 3-day interviews, right? Because I think as a CEO, the number one job you have is to get the best people on your team, the absolute best people. And that was unusual for Siemens. Most people didn't do that, right? But when I went to KPMG as a senior partner, and when we grew, very rapidly to about 1,000 people, I had to rely on the network. And there was a process where, it was really as Surbhi said, right? We'd get 200, we'd say we have looking for 5 people with SaaS skill, we'd get 200 jobs. There'd also be internal people. So that's the other thing. Be aware that you may have jobs internally if you're in a large organization to move up when new positions come up, because you're allowed to. And there, I would say the single most important thing was your network, right? If I'm a recruiter and I have a pile of 30 resume or manager, someone says, this Animesh guy is pretty good, right? Pull the resume out, look at it. What are you doing as a hiring manager when you have 200 resumes in front of you and you want to make a hiring decision? You're looking at a resume for 10 seconds, hoping to reject it. It sounds horrible, but you can't process 200. You want to get down to 20 or 10. And so you look at the resume. So make sure, the one piece of advice I'd give is, if you're applying for a relatively middle manager or from straight out of college to middle manager level job, make sure why you should be hired is there in the first 3 words that I look at. Because if it's not, or literally that first sentence needs to jump out, the person looking at it will simply move it, right? You want at the end, when it comes to somebody like me who's going to now carve out an hour to go through 10 resumes, I will have the time to look through it and see, they came from IIT Madras. Oh, wait, they've done work at YouTube with content, which is really good. But the person doing the initial screen won't. So literally your resume needs to be focused on that. And it's ideal if you have a person speaking for you. Now, in a startup, it's different, right? I mean, our first 15 hires are basically people my co-founder and I have worked with over a decade, and we're just starting to expand out. And again, right, if a recruiter handed me 20 resumes, I'd say they're not doing their job. They need to hand me 2 resumes that complete. So you need to have a good network. You need to be outstanding, depending on if you're trying to apply for a startup or someone to get in. Or you need to make your resume very clear and very professional when you're applying to a large company so that you pass through the filters to a smaller set to the person who will actually take a deep dive and see what an amazing candidate you are. But you have to understand that in the early stages, you just need to go through a bunch of hoops till you get to that last thing. And nothing beats that than having somebody put their finger in their resume.
I like that perspective a lot, Bharat. In fact, something that has worked from my perspective a lot. In fact, it's through and through. So with your product background, I'm hoping you'd agree. Working backwards from the customer's perspective is always good. And you have to think deeply. Wait, who is the customer? Oh, I have 6 layers of customers in this game. What are they? And Bharat, in my view, volunteering to help hire. If you have your first job already, awesome. I would say try to see if you can get in the hiring pipeline. It'll give you a taste of what it is, what it takes to hire people. It'll hopefully give you compassion for the poor guys and gals who are in the pipeline trying to filter. But to your point, I remember assessing like startup pitches. It took me a while and some coaching to realize that the goal was to reject, not to accept.
Yes.
And it research papers, same thing. You review papers, the goal over time became to reject. I do want to continue, unless Surabhi has an answer already with the example. Surabhi's still thinking. That's okay. I'm going to move on to Neetu with actually the same question. Bharat gave me this idea. So yeah, the recruiter version of this game, right? You are being asked to look for people. How do you filter?
Sure. It's a great question. So I'm actually going to wind it back a little bit and explain how to work with recruiters. So there is a vast difference within the recruiting world, depending on who you are or who you're working with. It's actually important to understand what a recruiter's motivation is and how you play into that. So there is agency recruiters, meaning they're people that work at agencies that are only paid if the search is completed. Then there's internal recruiters, so people that work at Apple or Disney, and their only job is to serve their internal hiring managers. Now, the compensation is vastly different. If you are an agency recruiter, you are only paid upon successful completion. So you think about that. You're not paid unless you fill the position. If you're an internal recruiter, you are salaried or you're hourly, but you are being paid for every hour of work. Now, why is this important to understand? It's important to understand because if I get 100 people messaging me and they don't fit my open jobs, I'm not going to respond. I would love to. And sometimes if someone catches me in a good moment, and I've got a couple of minutes of free, I'm going to donate some time and I'm going to talk to you and I'm going to try to help you. But I'm not paid for that. And my responsibility is to the clients that I have and the openings that I have. So I really need to be spending my time talking to people who fit. On the internal side, it is your job to respond to the applications and to follow up and have a much higher degree of customer care. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have it, so let's not get it twisted. I mean, on the agency side, you should have that. But understanding that the time is finite and how that recruiter is compensated and how that industry works is going to help you to understand how to get on their radar. So as a recruiter, what am I looking for? I'm looking for people that fit the jobs that I have that are open. So your best chance at getting in front of me and having a conversation and having me represent you for a lifetime is going to be, did you fit a search that I had at some point? So what am I looking for in that resume? I'm not reading your cover letter, your paragraphs. There's no time for that. What I'm looking for in the resume is exactly what Bharat talked about. Short, sweet, to the point. The problem with engineering resumes in general, if you're an engineer, is you usually put every single technology you've ever been exposed to on the resume. Cool, but you've made my life a nightmare because I actually have to figure out if I'm searching for a client that's like, I only want a Python engineer with Django Flask, or if I only want a Node engineer, but it's backend focused, I have to go and look under each of your positions to look to see if you worked with that. Now, I understand that there are plenty of companies out there that feel if you're a good engineer, they don't care what language you are and they'll hire it. I call it more of a tech agnostic, but there are a lot of companies that are looking for specificity. So in this current market, everyone knows the current macroeconomic conditions. You had a huge bubble in 21, 22, and there's been a huge correction in 23, 24. So people are paying a lot more attention to what they're spending. They're paying a lot more attention to cost, to profitability. A lot of companies that were dependent on capital were told 2 years ago, pretend like you're not going to get any extra capital for 2 years. So when you see a market like this and there's a lot of supply, people are going to get more specific on what they're looking for. So my advice would be make sure that your resumes are to the point. It covers what you've actually done. Don't worry about the fluff. No one's really reading that. We're looking at what have you done and make sure that you put what you've done in. I have seen every now and then I'll see resumes of people that don't actually put what they did at every job. You want to make sure that you do that. So the first couple of sentences on your last 2 or 3 jobs are going to be the most important. You can put an objective or a summary. I do read that. It should be a couple of sentences. Don't worry about your cover letter. Don't worry about a huge intro. It doesn't matter.
Thank you, Needed, for sharing. I often equate presentations and stuff to a good Mission Impossible movie. First 5 seconds, Tom Cruise is hanging on the side of a plane. You're going to watch the rest of the movie. And that's very, very key. Bharat, your take? You're unmuted at the moment, sir.
Sorry, Neetu made an exceptional point. There is only one purpose of a resume. One. It is to get you the interview. Or in the case, it is to get the recruiter to pass your resume on. And you really have to be ruthless, right? There's stuff you did back then you're really proud of. You want to tell the story. If it doesn't help you get the interview, kick it out. It doesn't matter. And white space is important. You give me a resume. I mean, when I started, I had a friend, fortunately, who was a recruiter. When I was like midway through Siemens and I got an opportunity, she said, send me a resume, I'll help you as a friend. Well, I had listed 150 papers. And she sent it back to me saying, I want this to be 2 pages. And I said, it's crazy. I can't make it 2 pages. And she said, you can say I have 120 papers and that's enough. And if they want it, there were no such things as web links at that time, so you can embed in. But so get it to be really, really clear. And as you get to the senior folks out there, you need a different resume for each position. You don't get to send a generic resume out. Now, if you work with Neetu or Conferi or someone, you will send them a resume, but they will get back to you. Your recruiter, if they like you, will get back to you and help you tailor your resume to the position if you're a senior person. But it's about, and I think Neetu is being nice. I'll be a little more brutal. I will not read your summary for your last 3 jobs if your first 2 sentences didn't catch me to go read what your next 3 jobs are. And it should just pop out, bang, bang, bang. That first page needs to be the hook. And then I will read it. If that hook is not there, next.
Thank you, Bharat. Surbhi, something that struck me in the discourse so far and what you had shared about your work in the various alumni networks and such, the AIML forum, ITK stuff, Bay Area, National PanIIT and whatnot. I think also, in my view, kind of correlates with the fact that our audiences, a good number of them are 20 plus years of experience. That is not where you have the thousands of applications going traditionally. I would expect some kind of a flip to happen in immersion. So Surbhi, how does it work from your vantage point about knowing the person? So far, we talked about what the resume looks like. That's more like, I have no idea who the person is. Your take on the...
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. Another correlated question is about networking. How much should you network to be able to build those connections? And I would say that it does help. It does help bring if I get a ping from somebody who's connected to me on LinkedIn or somebody I know, and they're saying, take a look at my resume, they get that ability to expose themselves a little easier, more efficiently to differentiate. However, there has to be some, metal behind that initial conversation. So I would say that does not take away that knowing somebody is not going to land your job, but it'll make, opening easier to be able to get somebody to look at your resume or give you feedback that, maybe no, you're not a good fit, but, thank you or whatever. One thing I wanted to say that beyond just knowing a person superficially or through network, not saying that networking is always superficial, but in that level, is references. I rely a lot. If I meet somebody from an IIT community that has applied that I feel is a good fit, I would still go do reference checks, and I would, see who else are we connected to, and if they've worked with somebody, because beyond, you can only assess so much during phone screen or even in-person interviews, or even if you bring them in to do a presentation. How well do they work with people? What is their reputation like? What is the legacy they have left behind? Especially because the audience is a 20+ year audience, I would say that you have to leave at places, companies that you've worked at in a good stead. Don't burn your bridges, because you will need those bridges. You do have to, unlike, where it happened, you do need to be able to go back to those people and say, hey, could you be a reference? And those references at our level at 20+ years better be glowing references, not just, I enjoyed working with this person, but they were a force of nature. They were able to accomplish this, that, or the other, or just they were such a pleasure to work with, very collaborative. So all of those interpersonal skills or soft skills start making a difference in how you build your connections and communication. So that would be, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Surabhi. And as a complement to this, what I've also noticed is, and I'm going to come back to this in a moment about how do you network. It's definitely a question, especially whether you are starting off or if you had your one job 20 years and now you're looking for a second job, you are still a newbie in that particular piece. It'll come back to this. That said, something that I have found very valuable when looking at people is people who volunteer, because I got my current job partly because me and my boss slash CEO slash mentor, who I've known 20 years now, we volunteered together to install Wi-Fi routers and networks in our campus back in IIT BHU 20 years ago. So when I was a research scientist in Paris, he was like, hey man, I'm starting my new company. I know you can get stuff done. Do you want to work together?
Yeah.
That, my friends, those of you who don't volunteer yet to organizations, and yes, shameless plug for PanIIT USA, but please find a local place, volunteer, spend your time. You will meet people who are similar, who will be moving up anyways. Bharat and Surabhi and Neetu and Vijay, they are also upwardly mobile. If you get to hang out with them while they're having fun, those memories stick. So when Surabhi starts the next company, she'll be like, it was so much fun on that beach cleanup hike day that we were doing that time. I'm going to call this person. So
I completely agree, Animesh, because I feel a person, the energy and the effort you put in anything, whether it's volunteering or your real job, it shows. So it does make a difference. And there are people that I've worked with in nonprofit or PanIIT kind of scenarios, and I see how much effort and energy they put in and how much selfless work they're putting in. It leaves a good impression to say, yes, if they are available and they're looking for something, I would nab them in a heartbeat. Yeah.
awesome. So yeah, team, once again, go to iit.org, look for the volunteer page, apply. Moving on to Vijay, from a very different perspective, I'm going to do a quick switch. In the meantime, there's another poll coming your way, all slightly sensitive, but we do want to understand how many of you are on H-1 visas and such, and how many of you are green card citizens. It'll help us tune our answers much better. Vijay, the question for you I have is, how do you prepare for a job hunt? Like mentally, resume, LinkedIn, there is so many things to be done. It's like trying to buy a house or whatever. Like, please share with us your perspective from that side.
I mean, like some of you who might be on H-1B visa, I was on H-1B visa. I'm still on H-1B visa. So for me, we all have a 60 days time bomb, which can destroy everything we built, including the American dream. Some might be ending up leaving USA, selling off the car, house, and losing everything. For me, it was more than that. My son's future, my son being diagnosed with autism spectrum, for us staying in USA is a crucial thing for us. So I was actually doing very good in my job, like getting 10% hikes back to back. But no promotion. So it was not very exciting. So I felt like stagnated in my career. And then the first thing I did was, I did a reflection on my own, like what Bharat was saying. So what do you want? What is the thing which makes me happy? And then I started auditing my career, and then optimized my resume, and then aligned my LinkedIn account to my resume. So I already know what roles I'm targeting. So I had worked on the various, like keywords optimization, all those stuff, which you hear. Like at the time, it was not very famous, but I somehow I managed to get all those things in my resume, and then that actually helped me to get opportunities to my way. And I got one opportunity where it's like they want to hire me as a contractor, and it's again a risk zone for me. So I didn't let it go. I know that's coming to me. So I started, negotiating with them, and finally I was able to convert it to a full-time opportunity and with a great salary. Of course, they tried to negotiate on that, but I actually traded salary with other benefits like extra leaves. So never let anything go from your table, and that's what I would say. And being prepared, do your groundwork very well, so that when you are in need of a job that comes towards you, you can run a marathon, doing a sprint training, like quick training for 3 weeks to 1 month, or you can build a stamina by working out every day. So I would choose the latter one.
Okay. I mean, I'm hearing sprint training, not a marathon training over here. Previously, I also heard, I think, Bharat, you had talked about your friend who was a recruiter. I think those pieces really work. What's it say? Like the best time to look for a job is when you already have a job, kind of a place, because you're starting from a little more comfortable position, hopefully a little more reflective. It definitely helps over there. I want to dive straight into the more deeper parts of it. Bharat, you had stated some things about the whole looking for a dream job part of it. Also, quick results are in. From early results, we are looking at a 64% immigrant green card citizen versus a 36% non-immigrant population that we are looking at. Again, moving towards, if we do have a majority of a 20+ years experience, high likelihood of seeing it this space. So yes, these questions are not independent vectors, guys. Those of you who remember your linear algebra. We are seeing a correlation over here. But Bharat, I do want to dig deep into this one with you. Does the dream change over time? How does it look? Because you have had 3 dream jobs from the way I see it. Tell us a little more, please.
So I'm going to riff on something which Neetu said, which I thought was very insightful, where she said, hey, I wasn't my dream job. I was going to be a lawyer. That was all crapped out for me, and I went into this. I talked about knowing yourself. Early in your career, you may not know yourself, and having the humility to know that is important and try different things, right? It took my going to Siemens Corporate Research, working in machine learning, driving home one day going, I can't believe they're paying me to do this. Literally, right? That's the feeling. And when I talk about dream job, that's the feeling I've had throughout my job. But the second point, and I think Neetu made this, is 80% of your dream job is, forgive my French, complete crap. You have to deal, especially as you get senior, with politics. You have to be able to do stuff to create the runway so your people, your team can actually work on what it is you're trying to achieve, right? You have to deal with the politics. You have to deal with people say, this is my turf, how dare you do this? Or people going, no, in a large global organization, this is being done by this group in Switzerland, right? So you've got to deal with that kind of stuff. Someone asked me, CEO of a startup, that must be cool. I'm like, great. And I said, you know what, it's like being CEO of a restaurant. Who do you think goes and cleans up the spill in the bathroom when the bathroom floods over when the janitor doesn't show up? It's you, right? So the dream job is that 10, 20% where you're doing something which is truly meaningful to you, in my opinion. But the rest of it is making sure you can do it. And there are days when I hated my job. So it wasn't like this comfortable life journey. And I also made a comment about money, right? My point was your focus, right? I've done well. Senior partners at big 4 firms do well, right? But that wasn't my goal. My goal was not to make money. My goal was to do what I wanted to do and get really, really good at it. And as long as that's valuable, what I wanted followed. So those are my comments for a dream job. Understand it, secure it, and don't expect everything to be great, because it's not going to be, right? To do what you want to do really, really requires you doing a lot of other work to make it happen. And then I'll add one more comment about what happens if you're already, when is the best time to look for your dream job? The best time to look for your dream job is when you're secure, happy, content in your current job, right? The confidence you have interviewing when you know, hey, I can put the food on the table for my family or pay my mortgage is huge, right? As opposed to I need one. Secondly, you need to build the interview muscle. And I'm going to share something, right, which I haven't shared with a lot of people, but I think it's important. In 2008, I got an opportunity to interview for what is a dream job, building a machine learning division from scratch for a CEO who's now CEO of a Fortune 5 company, right? And and I say this without a lot of arrogance, I was the best qualified person in the world for the job. I had been recommended to the CEO by a bunch of people in the company who loved what I was doing. I absolutely butchered the interview. You know why? I hadn't interviewed since grad school. And I interviewed the way you would when you were in grad school. Which is very different when you're interviewing for a senior executive in a Fortune 10 firm, right? You need to interview all the time. It's no different than, practicing your baseball swing or training for a marathon. You need to get that interview muscle. So the best time to interview is when you're in a great position. Go out, interview every year.
Such good points, Bharat. Such good points. We have so many questions and answers coming in. I'm going to pick one to take us completely off of the track where we have been on, kind of sort of, and that's the MBA track. There are people who are posting, there's questions coming in about, hey, I'm about to get an MBA. I have an engineering degree, but I don't have, well, a computer science degree. What do I do to get in and stand out in roles that will fit my MBA? And the question is open to everybody.
I think I can take a first stab, and Neetu, I see you're leaning in, so you might be trying to get into it as well. To me, I think the combination of tech plus MBA is really, really important, especially in the Valley and in tech industry. We do have a lot of seniors who have risen from the tech side, engineering side, and sometimes they do have challenges as they come to the level of, doing financial work or, strategy work or working with investors and all of that. And you get rounded up when you have that MBA and that ability to look at finances, to be able to talk about projections, to be able to have those engagements and conversations. So at the senior levels, I think it's always appreciated. How you position yourself, resume, the job you look for that utilizes that combination. I will need to address that. But as a senior leader, I absolutely look for that combination myself in people.
That's a very good point, Surabhi. I also want to kind of dig deeper into the entry-level version of this, because, hey, I have, call it a BTech in chemical engineering and an MBA. I have a Wharton MBA. I want to be product manager at Nile.
Mm-hmm.
Do I qualify? Do I not qualify? That's where the other piece of this lives, where my ability to run numbers and figure out projections and EBITDA driving may not matter as much as a entry-level product manager.
Correct. That is true. Yeah, that is very true, Animesh. So sorry to cut you off. Didn't mean
Please go ahead. I'm happy you did. Go ahead. Tell me. What do I do if I'm that way?
My thinking is that an MBA definitely adds more value when you have had a few years of working experience, because you're able to, right? And I see Neetu, if you can spotlight her, I see her shaking her head.
This is where the panelists, everybody goes off mute and starts talking over each other. Do it. It's fine.
Yeah. Please join in.
Well, I leaned in because I wanted to hear Surabhi talk. That was what that was about. I was like, ooh, let me hear the answer to this. I wonder what she's going to say. And it's fascinating because I'm watching. So I have a contrary thought, which is the number one thing people are going to look for is production experience. And when I say production experience, I just mean experience working at a company in a capacity. So if you're in R&D, people are going to pick up you for R&D jobs. If you're trying to make a switch and you're in AI and you're on the research side and you're trying to make a switch into a core product, you're not going to qualify on paper. I'm not saying that you can't do the job. I'm not saying that you wouldn't be amazing for it. I'm saying if you're going up against a big pool of applicants, they're going to choose the person that's done it. So what do? You had a chemical undergrad degree, you have an MBA, you did something else, you got an MBA. How do I get a job? Well, you paid a lot of money for school. So I hope you're hammering the alumni association for your master's. Same thing for your undergrad. I had wanted to circle back on networking, and perhaps there'll be another time to do that. But the most important thing will always be, again and again, your network. And Surbi said it very nicely because she was like, oh, networking, not necessarily, networking is absolutely superficial. Of course it is. Your goal is to get in front of people, make an impact, have a memory, and then hopefully you're having a follow-up cocktail, lunch, dinner. It depends on the event, depends where you are, but your goal is to make an impact to get a further meeting. So number one, network is most important. Second thing, you don't have a network. You went to undergrad, you went to get an MBA. You need to hammer the people that you paid because they told you that they were going to help you get a job after. So make sure you're utilizing that. You stay on the radar, be super aggressive about it. Everyone that went to that school has a job. You should be messaging them directly on LinkedIn. Hey, I saw you got an MBA from, I don't know, Georgetown.
Yeah, somebody did ask that question on that. How do I, and we should do that. And I want to address your question specifically, and I hope that'll resonate with the audience here. If you have a background in a certain thing and you get an MBA, and now you said, Animesh, now I want to go to Nile for a specific role, I would not look at it like that. I would go to what Bharat said, that you know yourself. You have these, things in your armor. Now, how do you utilize that to find the right fit? You have to utilize it. You cannot say, I did this, and now I want that job that is completely maybe tangential. You can build towards that. So you know where you're at and you know your goal. I always tell friends, and they just, not everybody appreciates that have a 5-year goal. So you may not have like a dream job, because I agree with Bharat, there's nothing as a dream job. You have to figure out what your goals are personally, professionally, where you want to be. What do you want to grow up in? And then start working towards that. So see where what job you can land with what's on your resume today. And then maybe you can work towards what you're talking about, Animesh, that I need this, job at Nile or whatever.
Such a valid point. Reminds me of.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, in surfing and skiing and other such sports, it is always said, look where you want to go. Because your body makes micro movements and it takes you there. If you look at your feet, you're going to go very quickly to the ground. That's why you train yourself to look further. I think that would work well. I'm looking at a whole bunch of questions coming in. There's 2 critical buckets I want to look at. The first bucket is the fact about maybe having to move to India, immigration issues. There are off the relatively lower portion here, but still an important 33% of our audience and so many alumni. People who are in H1s, there is this whole thing about, wait, do I move back to India? What do I do? Open thoughts, Vijay. I know you've gone through this personally a lot. There's people who are like, hey, should I just move back to India? How about that? Everybody, open question for those who are wondering.
It's a personal choice. Again, like for me, like we did move back to India in 2020. We tried to stay in India for 3 months, and we figured out, that's not the place for my child because of his needs being met in US in a better way. So we actually came back. So it's all about the trade-off, Sometimes if you don't want the slavery, in the modern slavery of H1B, definitely you should go back to India.
I personally think there are a lot of opportunities, and maybe it's not the right answer for everybody. And so I don't want to speak without knowing people's situations and context, but the opportunities and abilities to monetize your skill is very good in India, where it's very pro startup. There's a lot of investment in AI being made. So I think there are good opportunities there, but it really is such a personal decision. Like Vijay is saying, he has a personal reason why he would prefer to be here. So it depends on the person. But if once you have established your life here, it's very hard. And I would give people a recommendation of seeing if you can go to school for a bit, hold off and while you figure things out. Also, again, comes back to networking. Go back to companies where that they hire H1Bs, and then network with people there, reach out to recruiters there. You'll reach out to 100 people before maybe one would respond, and be prepared for that. It's not anything against a specific person. That's the nature of online networking. So
you do what you got to do. So it's going to depend. If you're looking to get your first job and you're in India and you're looking to come to the US, then that's going to be a challenge in the current market. When things swing back, we are experiencing an AI boom. There's a ton of funding that's going on in that sector. So I do believe that 2025 will look a lot different than the last 2 years. So let me give you a little piece of good news. You can follow trading.
Maybe you have good news for us?
Yeah, there's some good news, Go to tradedvc.com, go to TechCrunch, follow the stuff yourself. I love some of what Bharat said, which I like that he's a little blunt and direct, but you need to hear these things. Follow the information yourself. Make sure you understand it. When you look at funding in the last 8 weeks alone, there's been way more funding in the last 8 weeks than we've seen probably in the last 2 years. It's all going to AI, manufacturing, space, defense. So if you're in India, what companies there also have a US presence? Can you go work there? Be such a value add that company brings you over here. If you're here and you're currently on one and you're running up against the transfer time and you're not able to find a job, first of all, I'm so sorry. It's horrible to have seen how many layoffs went on and to be in that position, and you have my every empathy. But being in this business, I want to try to provide you some solutions since we're on the panel. You want to make sure that, like Surabhi said, you're targeting the companies that do it, have the experience with it. If you're from another country coming to look here, work in that country, be a value add, be a skill set that's unique enough to get you over here. That's what I would say.
Thank you,
And
Bharat. Thank you, Bharat. You're the AIML guy. Please go ahead. Your take on this.
So, riffing on what Neetu said about AI, and I'm sorry if I'm too blunt, but no one has accused me of being very tactful my entire life. So, sorry, that's just it. There is a transformational wave going on. It's Gen AI. It's going to change the way we work. As an aside, if you are not using Gen AI for a few hours every day, you are really cutting yourself short on the job. If your team isn't using it, there's a problem. But here's the secret. Gen AI does not, to the folks who said, oh, I have a computer science degree. Gen AI does not need a computer science degree. It needs, it's now turning into the using of Gen AI, prompt engineering, and that's stuff that can be done anywhere to that point. So I would, if you're so inclined, lean heavily into that in a particular industry and make yourself super valuable there. It's just one thought to add.
In fact, sorry, but please continue.
No, that's it. Go ahead.
But in fact, knowing that your electronics background, it is very much like saying, oh my God, microchips are coming around. Everybody must be an electronics engineer to get jobs in this upcoming computer programming industry. No, you had to learn a whole layer of skill set on top of it. And they're still chip designers, very important people, but then there are layers on top of it. I want to do another hard pivot on this one, but I think it's a very important one. And I firmly believe that much like you should look for a job when you don't need to look for a job, you should network, you should get to know people before you need to get to know people. Walking up to somebody at a PanIIT event being like, hi, so who are you? I'm Animesh, I'm looking for a job. Like, yeah. Like the first feel I have is, oh, this guy's gonna ask me for a job right now. Like it's an interesting feel, but I'm gonna step back. Surabhi, you recently ran TiCon up in the Bay Area and so many other things. Starting with you, I do want to spend the next 5 minutes staying on the networking topic. So many people here honestly will need to know how to network. What are, I don't know, a couple good or bad ways to walk up to somebody and say hello?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Animesh. And this is something that all of us have a challenge. It's not like, if you've been doing it for 10 years, it becomes easier. Walking up to somebody, or you see a bunch of people standing having a conversation and you have to insert yourself politely. It's something the more you do, the more comfortable you get with it. But it's important you see somebody standing around the coffee shop or, picking up some coffee, you go and start having a conversation. Find places, either, people you're interested in, either you do your homework beforehand in a networking event. I sometimes will do that. I'll look at the roster and see if there are few people that I want to connect with, I'll seek them out. But at a TiCon or a PanIIT kind of event where you have thousands of people, it's okay just to go and just meet people randomly as you move around, grabbing coffee, lunch. And again, Neetu, I see you're nodding. I'll love to hear your thoughts. But I have also realized over time that initially when I was younger, I would just go and just build my Rolodex, bring cards of as many people as I could. And that was not very a good approach. Now I make an effort to have, even if I've talked to a fewer number of people, but have a more meaningful conversation of a few minutes where you're able to find some common connections point that you both will remember each other. That when you send out a follow-up email or LinkedIn message, it resonates that, oh, yes, I talked to this person. I remember who they are, versus like, I met hundreds of people. I don't remember who this person is. So make an effort to spend more time. Don't be in a rush to just say your hellos, exchange business cards, and move on. Really try to understand who they are and how you could connect. What are some common points? Like Neetu said, leave an impression. That's extremely important.
I like that, Surabhi. Also, I think it's to kind of tease it out a little bit. I think it's also okay to suck at it.
Yeah.
Walk up, and you may not like people. Bharat's hand is up. Go ahead, Bharat.
So, I'm going to give the techies answer to networking. And this is a book, it came out in 2009. It's called Windmill Networking. It's how to use LinkedIn to build your network. And back in 2010, someone gave it to me. I had less than 500. I had like 200 people in my network. Today, I have 8,000. Now, there have been subsequent updates, but LinkedIn is an awesome networking guide, right? And again, to Surabhi's point, maybe reach out to 100 people, but that one person reaches out to you. So I made a decision in 2010 when I read it that every week I'm going to connect to 10 people, right? And then obviously you said, and that's what happened, and it kept snowballing. And I just set aside, and it's literally 20 minutes or 15 minutes of your time, and do it while you're watching TV. It's not a big deal, but build that network. Because certainly, I mean, I was in Siemens for 20 years. I had everyone in Siemens knew me. Everyone in the machine learning AI community knew me. But then by the time I came to look for a job in 2012, I had opportunities in academics. I had opportunities in tech. I had opportunities in back in India, even going and working for Reliance, leading a data, I had, including in consulting, which I had never dreamed I would go work in consulting, because I always viewed that as, something different from no techie goes works in consulting. Build that network and start today. Oh, I only have 500 people. It grows 10 at a time.
Yeah.
And of course, do what you can, what Surabhi said, but not all of us necessarily have the confidence to go up to somebody and say to them, hey, you could do the same thing afterwards. Loved your talk. It was awesome. You can wordsmith. You can have ChatGPT write the perfect connection message to somebody and send it to them. And they'll be like, oh, wow, the person liked my talk. Connect. And 2 years later, you're looking for a job. Hey, remember we connected? No one's going to do that. Yeah, sure. You help me.
Great. And I think I love the book suggestion, and the one book everyone has to read when you're talking about human connection is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I think if you're someone that comes up through engineering, or you feel a little uncomfortable because you've been behind a computer most of your life and you're introverted, here's your advantage. You don't talk 24/7. You listen, you're attentive, you learn. So you can learn how to have people skills. You can learn how to be extroverted. You can put yourself out of it, but you should probably start with really reading and understanding the concepts first, and then you can implement them. With networking events, you should go to everything. Anything that's local, that's open. When you're looking at some of the paid ones, you just want to see who's attending the paid ones before you invest your money in it. So before you drop like $5,000 on a week-long conference, just see who's going. Make sure that it's worth your time. Anything that's free and public that you have access to and the people, just go. Your goal in every single one of them should be 5 authentic conversations. So I loved what Surabhi said about, like, in the beginning, I'm just trying to meet everybody. Here's 100 cards. I took 100 cards. I connected with 100. I did that too. I did that all the time. And then a couple of weeks later, I'd be like, gosh, nothing really went anywhere. I got nothing really out of it. And it wasn't really enjoyable either to just bum rush 100 people and be like, hi, I'm Neetu. I'm a recruiter. You probably don't want to talk to me, but you're going to talk to me. Like, that's, and that is kind of my personality. So it's, you know what I mean? And it's just, because I just like, let's just get it out of the way. Like, this is who I am. This is what I do, and then then you get the awkward person looking at you and then turning around and you're like, oh, that didn't feel very good. But over time, you get over it because you can't take it personally. And when you really understand what someone else's motive might be and how to play into that, it becomes a lot easier. So just do 5. A couple of tips for public networking events that I would tell you to have is bring a lot of snacks with you, because there usually isn't snack bar in between panels and events. So you can offer people food. Oh, are you hungry? Here's
Oh,
something.
look at that. Nice.
And I'm going to give you people stuff, because let me tell you, when I started recruiting, I knew nothing. So all I had was, I shamelessly pitched that my dad went to IIT, by the way, to have conversations. So anytime I was talking to somebody really smart, I was like, my dad went to IIT, like inferences. Hey, I might be a little smart. Talk to me.
I have to make one more point about what Bharat said, that if people are introverts and they don't want to network, there are other ways to build your community and build your platform, is by sharing what you know. There are ways that you can write articles, you can share your own learning and knowledge. So it's not always about that you have to network through, these events where you have to go and have the courage to talk to people, but you can create your own following on LinkedIn, on Medium, where you write things. And if you're really technologically savvy and you are, like Bharat is saying, AI or any field, that is the most important, top of mind for people. Start writing stuff about that. Create a place where people can ask you questions. And that's where you could build your own brand and your own way to communicate and reach out to people, that people will start knowing you. So that could be another way for introverts, or technically, or people who have said, like Neetu said, sit behind their computer.
And
well, I
Surbhi,
think Bharat and Surbhi. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was
just to
going
finish the flow for Surbhi over here. I think in terms of platforms, I believe Blogger used to be a big thing back when. Medium became big. I think now, honestly, LinkedIn is the platform that is there.
Yeah.
Use LinkedIn, write posts on LinkedIn, have conversations, see how it goes. Write your first post in which only one of your closest friends likes and responds, and that is okay. When I began to learn how to surf, I remember struggling so much about being able to pop up and stand. Neetu, about having those 5 meaningful conversations, right? Everybody, you will freak out. You will not be able to have those 5. If in your very first meeting, Neetu, if you focus on having those 5 good conversations, you will not have any. So over time, I changed my goal to, I will fall today 10 times from the board. But when I fall from the board, I will look at my feet as I'm falling. Just that. So the goal shift, I can tell you as the engineer, as maybe overly logical guy, it really helped me focus on the falling part. So it made me try. And after a while, sure enough, because I was watching my feet as I was falling, I was able to change my position. So maybe a stepping stone needed to having those 5 would be, I will have 10 conversations to observe what happened.
Yeah, learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, hopefully ending with 5 good ones.
And I'll just, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll just add what I say to my kids, right? The only failure is not trying, right? There is no failure in failing. So let's say you have 10 conversations and all 10 of them go away thinking, what an idiot. Guess what? If you're no worse off than if you didn't have those 10 conversations, right? There's no shame in reaching out to someone and someone not wanting to connect with you. It's okay. You get better at it eventually, right? Same with reaching out on LinkedIn. Just be persistent. You will eventually start to build your network.
Vijay, you were trying to chime in. I know we have been talking a lot. I'd love to hear from you.
I mean, like pretty much you answered. Like one of the thing I want to add here is like go extra mile. If someone needs any help, even those kind of areas where you are not expert, but still standing next to them in their trouble, would make them remember all their life. That empathy would count. And also when you meet people, like you genuinely ask them what are the 2 things which they would want to, share with you, which would help you in the career. Like, so people would brag about their success, what their learnings. So that gives them a sweet spot as well, So you actually connect with them because you're asking them how they were successful, and they would go on and all. Be patient, understand what they're trying to tell you, and like get the meat out of it, And that's where you can actually get connected. So this is what I want to share.
That's nice.
Actually, what you said was amazing. Because when you ask people things, people like to talk about themselves. So basically what I heard from what you said, which is such a great point in connection, is ask people interesting questions and let them talk. And then you can offer, but you bond that way. I think that's just such a salient point.
Neetu, that comes from...
I got 2 jobs just by helping people. They wanted to hire me. Like, there was one of my subordinate, he was struggling to get a break. He joined as an associate engineer and he did MBA. He wanted to move into pre-sales, which I was working in my first job. I trained him everything from scratch and he cracked the interview. The first thing he said is, which I want you to be in my team. So things happen, like You make new connections, new opportunities open.
Such good points. In terms of a quick book thing, How to Win Friends, Influence People. Another one, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, has a very key thing: seek first to understand, then be understood. Definitely ties into the listening part. Again, I'm going to make one of my now famous hard left turns. Ageism, very different from all we have discussed so far. Again, our audience skewing 20+ years. Is ageism real? What do you do? If you're an older professional, you want to switch, you suddenly got laid off. I recently was talking to an IITian who, co-founder of a company, multiple acquisitions, this, that, the other, chief science officer, suddenly laid off. That's an extremely anomalous position to be in. Suggestions from our hiring managers, recruiters, seniors on how real is it? How do you do? What
It used to
mindset should you
be,
have?
it used to be 20, 25 years ago. I would hear it quite often. I don't hear it anymore. I don't see it. I think my clients value experience. They want seniority. They want to see that their ideal hire, typically when you're dealing with a larger, let's say a startup that's raised 50 to 100 million, is they want to see somebody that succeeded in a big company, but they also want to see someone that successfully scaled in a startup. So you can't have those experiences 5 to 10 years in your career. You need 20 years to have accumulated it. So it's a great question. I don't see it. And there's a lot of initiatives on the federal level and on the state level that have really impacted that, to make sure that people are hiring regardless of age. When you're interviewing, when you're interviewing people, you're not actually supposed to ask questions that allude to age or what their life situations can be that could prohibit them.
To be blunt, we can scan LinkedIn resumes and figure out roughly what age bracket somebody. But what are the first 4 good words you would hope to see in somebody that shows their experience?
So I think we need to hit on, right? If there is a fit, right? We are looking to hire, for instance, a chief medical officer for a firm, and this is a person who is in their 60s, has practiced. And I view that as a plus. This is someone who's seen the evolution and change. Now, I wouldn't hire that person to be an entry-level engagement manager because, A, they cost too much or whatever, but that position requires 2 years of experience, right? So I'm just pointing out, right? But for the right position, I think experience is a huge plus. I'll add one more thing. An invaluable tool for the chief data science officer who got laid off is recruiters. People like Neetu, people like the Big Five, who know you, who know how good you are. You've been talking to them the last 1 or 2 years while you have the job. They know what you want, what you're looking for. Second thing. Third thing, if you're a senior position, it depends on how senior you are, make sure you have a year to 6 months worth of runway if you get laid off, right? You want to be in a position where for 6 months at least, you have no angst about not having a job. None, zero. Your family knows it, they understand it. There's no pressure that says take the first job. And you can look actively because that's what it takes for a senior position, which is why, again, to my point, if you're continuously updating and looking, you will have a backlog of jobs that one of your recruiters, you won't go to all of them on Jan 1, will have at different points in time. Your career is nobody cares more about your career than you. Nobody's responsible for your career other than you. Do the work to secure it. Because that is, for most of us, unless, you're CEO of a startup or whatever, founder of a startup, you need help from other people. And so build that network, build those recruiters, especially if you're senior, be looking and be kind to people. You never know when. You know how I got my job at KPMG? Someone who was a junior person, like my group of like 300 people in Siemens, went to KPMG. They heard they were looking, and very timidly she went up to her boss and said, "Hey, I know someone who could be good. He's not a consultant." And suddenly they created a whole new position that was basically based on someone like me. Wouldn't have happened if she hadn't said. I mean, there needed to be other steps. So be kind to all the people with you. Don't say I'm a big shot and so, hey, I can be a jerk. Because you, A, treat them how you want to be treated, and you never know how anybody could help you. Sorry, there's a lot in there, but use the network, build it. Don't worry about age. You can't control it, dude. I mean, simple as that.
Yeah, I
I
would
wish
say
I was 40 again.
Surbi, go
I
ahead.
wish I had 2 kids in kindergarten and young like that. I don't, right? I can't change that. But I have things that I didn't have at 40. I have confidence, I have experience. I know I can execute. Let that come through. But you can only do that if you're not desperate. You have that 6 to 12-month runway, and you have the network you can leverage immediately day one when you get laid off.
I would not call it ageism, but I do want to acknowledge that there are certain roles that people look for, young college grads, or if it's a very highly, programming, coding, you do want the person to know what is the latest and greatest. There, new languages come up, new ways of doing things come up. So they might be looking for somebody who's, newer in the journey versus somebody who's more senior. So I think we also have to understand where we are on the journey, what kind of roles to go after. So I wouldn't call it ageism. I would say that, some roles like a 60 plus year for a CMO, if a young grad goes and applies to that, they could say that's ageism because I'm very young. That's why. So it's not ageism. It's knowing where you are in your career journey and applying for roles or looking for roles that align with that. Your years of experience, your skill set, what you bring to the table, and it may not be what an entry level person would bring, and you would be too expensive for that entry level role. That's the other thing. If I'm looking for somebody with 2-3 years experience, even if a 10 plus years person is potentially a good fit, I have to think I would pay them 3 times more maybe. So all of that makes a difference too
In
in
fact,
how we hire.
Surbi, I had this conversation actually recently with somebody we were looking to hire, and I said, hey, just to be clear, we can't pay you more than X. You're
Mhm.
okay with that, right? And the person actually was very wise. They were like, actually, no, your comp plan actually has a fixed and a variable component. I expect to use my experiences and my network to get so much in the variable that don't worry, I got this. We're like, okay, cool. Just want to make sure that this will be a good fit for you. Team, this is for everybody. We may go 10 minutes more. This is good flow. I like it. However, I'm going to do a very quick one question round. One single tip in terms of, hey, right now, if I could do one thing only, and I know it's very synthetic, if I could do one thing only to land a good job of the kind I'm looking for, whether it's urgent, stepping stone, or this, let's go on the table and you can add something else. Don't just say, yeah, what the previous person said. That way our audience gets 4 different perspectives at least, all complementary. Neetu, I'm going to start with you.
Make sure you reached out to every single person you know ever
Okay.
in life,
That was mine.
like every single person ever, and on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Something new now. Make sure you reach out.
Damn it, that was mine.
I
okay?
know. So, Bharat, I'm going to put you on the spot then.
No,
Tell
no,
us
let me
something else.
think. I got to think about
Okay,
it.
fine. We're going to move to Surbi then. Surbi.
I would say that if it was in a specific area and you've already reached out to everyone that need to suggest, I would write an article about it and tag the people that I know that are in that space to bring their attention to that article or that topic, or to initiate that conversation, to bring people in to speak, because people do love to share and talk about what they know. So engage them in some way that you become top of mind, or somebody that they acknowledge and become aware of.
Wonderful. Reach out to people, write an article. Vijay, your perspective. If people here listening could do one thing, in addition to the previous two.
I would build a portfolio always, be prepared with examples of your work, because just an example, I helped a mother to return to work after 10 years gap. She's above 40 years age, and she was not confident at all. I taught her how to build graphs in like forecasting using Tableau, and taught her how to put it on the public widgets. So by the time she had her interview, she had 20 plus widgets, and she could speak about those things. That helped her to get a job. So I would actually prepare. So now that we are in Gen A context, do small projects where you did something like that, where you can talk about it if you want to cut into the new areas,
Wonderful.
like new career areas.
Reach out to people, write about some stuff, practice, use some tools. Bharat, over to you for your second idea.
Okay. It's gonna be slightly longer than it's going to take about a minute. So I'm going to focus on the interview experience. So after my traumatic experience where I shared where I walked in and I walked out of the interview thinking I had nailed it. That's the irony, right? The feedback I got was, dude, you were terrible. I really went back and realized I'm going to share with you what my understanding is that there are really only 3 things you need to worry about when you make it to the interview. All the stuff about working a resume network gets you to the interview. There are literally only 3 questions I, as an interviewer, am looking at you for. Do you have the skills to do the job? Are you motivated to do the job? Are you a good guy? Are you a jackass? Am I going to enjoy working with you? 3 things. This means, practically, everything you say, what Surbi said about her experiences, needs to answer one of those 3 questions. Needs to show your skills, your motivation, and that you are a great team player who's going to make this better. You don't say anything else. You don't assume when the guy says, oh, that was a great interview, let's go have a drink in a bar, the interview is over. You're still getting interviewed. Every answer is one of those 3, and you need to practice. And when I figured that out, I never failed to get a job I interviewed for that I wanted, that I was qualified for. So that would be my tips.
Thank you. Practicing of the interview process, looking at those 3 dimensions, definitely very valuable. My little footer perhaps to all of this, to add to this, get out there. And I would say PanIIT USA and your local IIT chapters are a very good place. If nothing, go attend an event organized by my buddies, Amit Abduturi, Amit Arora, the chapter reps. We have physical chapters all around. Just go have chai and samosa with the people. That's okay. Start with the people who, well, maybe also were in Aravali or Nilgiri or whichever. You will find some people. You will get to have, it'll be okay. For those of you who may be struggling or having low confidence, oh my God, what's going to happen? It'll be fine. Spend some time, hang out. Looking back at my career, I got my grad school application because I went to a conference, met the professor. Post PhD, I got my research job because I had interned with the professor and worked with them. After that, I got my job because I have worked with the guy in alumni stuff. These things actually matter, and they work in weird ways that you have not planned for. Don't overplan. And that'll be my compliment perhaps to all those pieces. So Neetu, when you do reach out to somebody, you have already spoken to them, hopefully, and they may remember you. Everybody, this has been awesome. Amitabh from PanIIT has a more formal vote of thanks, but here's my informal vote of thanks. Everybody, thank you for coming. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. So much fun.
So, I was reflecting on some adjectives to define this webinar. And the ones that came to mind were words like bindas, chakas, and some others that are not very politically correct. But just an amazing job. Animesh, what a lovely initiative you launched for all of us. And you absolutely held the steering wheel there with great confidence, great flow. Okay. Amit Arora and Swati, I mean, none of this would happen without coordinators and people who do the planning. So both of you, my goodness, what a lovely job. Second level of thanks obviously goes to these 4 beautiful, wonderful, informative, and Vijay, Neetu, Bharat, Surbi, I'm retired, and you almost incent me to start looking for a job again. So that's how good it was. We have a list of almost 70 questions, which could make a whole book if we tried to answer them. And we'll try to put out the video and some of these questions so that other people can reflect on these issues. The video will be on YouTube, Swati tells me, so please wait and we'll have the information out to you. The last one goes out to all of you who patiently, stayed with us. One of the most successful webinars I've seen so far in the last couple of years. Really, thank you to all of you for being patient and asking those questions. And hopefully this has been useful for you. So thank you, everyone.
And thank you all. The next step would be check out iit.org/jobs. We are posting positions over there. Thank you once again for people who attended. Thank you to all the panelists. And we will see you in the next event. We'll be holding a couple more, focusing more deeply onto deep technical skills, how to use LinkedIn, and things of that nature. So we will see you around. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.